Imagine if that head trash was not there. Who would you be? What if I told you those fears were no longer a problem? What would you do? I'm Stephanie Costello, a mom of 3, wife, and avid mountaineer. Beyond all of these, I am very much like you, an average person trying to navigate this thing we call life. My goal with this podcast is to bring to light the truth about what intimacy really is. You may smile, feel called out, or learn something new. Either way, you will learn you are in control. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Alexis and Kyle, both owners of Renegade, where they specialize in one-on-one personal care that allows you to not only get rid of your pain now, but feel better for life. Their specialties are sports performance, general orthopedics, and pelvic health physical therapy. Their promise is to not only find solutions for what you're going through, but to also keep you active and doing whatever it is that you love. Alrighty. Hello, Kyle and Alexis. Thank you for joining me on the Intimacy Truths podcast.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm super excited to talk about how people are not broken and how sometimes they perceive that they're broken and they wonder why they're not having a strong interest in sexual health or intimacy with their partner. And that oftentimes can be related to dysfunction with pelvic floor concerns. So please help us and understand how you both decided. I love your unique duo. So let me know how that came together and then how you decided to both come into pelvic floor dysfunction.
So, well, I guess we'll start at the beginning. Lex and I met in undergrad, actually.
Yeah.
And then we went to the same physical therapy doctoral program,
Yeah.
And then as far as like becoming interested in pelvic floor physical therapy, for those who are listening and may not know, pelvic floor physical therapy is essentially what you would conceptualize physical therapy to be. It's treatment of muscles, nerve, bone, and movement and coordination and all of those things, just with a focus and an emphasis or paying more attention to the pelvic floor muscles, which are really important. We can maybe get into that later on in this, but
yeah.
So how we came to be interested in that, kind of both of us feel the same way, I think.
Yeah.
In that there was this gap that we found when we were receiving most of our formal education in like, oh, people might have hip or low back or whatever, but what about the section in between? Or like, you memorize like the origin, insertion, action, innervation of all the muscles, which is maybe a dated way to learn anatomy, but at any rate, you learn all those things, but then there's like a group of like, I don't know, almost a dozen muscles that are just like, ignore those ones in that pelvic bowl there.
Yeah.
That are completely attached to all the other ones in the entire body. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
So like the more we learned that things were like really integrated, if people are kind of super interested, Tom Myers does anatomy trains, and that's like a myofascial continuity program. Anyway, so you can take a lot of deep dives down rabbit holes, and things are very, very connected. And so when we started looking at that, all roads kind of led to the pelvic floor is very important and is integral to kind of human movement.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why we were interested.
Well, and on top of that, it's one of those things where not many people, one, do it, not many people know about it, and it's super taboo, it makes it frustrating only because a lot of people don't explore or have options for getting treatment for these problems. So like when someone says, I mean, I am culprit of this, like I went to a doctor and I had talked about pain with sex with them, and it was just kind of like, we'll change positions, as if that's an answer to the problem.
Yeah, just deal with it. It's like,
right. So
have a glass of wine. That's the worst.
So like, exactly. So it's terrible. So like I've been a victim to it too. So like when I think about what issues people are facing and how they don't feel like there's a solution for them, it's honestly heartbreaking.
Especially when there is one.
Right. It's so heartbreaking because it's one thing to feel like there's not a solution, and there's one thing to feel like there's not a solution and you're just missing the boat on not knowing what it is because no one else knows. I mean, there's doctors that don't know that our specialty exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Even urologists, gynes, urogynes.
Yeah.
Sad, right?
Yeah.
I've
to
worked
tell you.
with lots of OBGYNs and lots of professionals that are not as knowledgeable in sexual health as they should be when they literally work with the sexual organs of our body, you know? And so it's definitely really hard. And it's like, how can we bring this holistic stuff to light, right? Have a glass of wine. That is terrible. That is like, hey, remove your ability to give your partner consent or not, and then you'll feel better about it. It's like, no, right? And then, oh, well, just deal with it. Well, no, you don't have to just deal with it, you know? And then there's not even the knowledge and the education on basic lubrication and understanding how
Yeah.
water-based is different from silicone, right? And all those other things. And then even deeper than that, you know, there's other medical diagnoses like diabetes and cancer that affect vaginal dryness, and that is very painful for lots of women, right? So it's really disheartening, like you said, that there's so many people suffering, and then the emotional suffering, right? Not even just the physical pain aspect to it, but the emotional suffering. Why am I broken? It's like, you're not broken, right? And why doesn't my partner love me? Or why, in usually on the male side of it, right? Like, why doesn't my partner want to have sex with me? And they're not feeling confident and they're feeling let down, and they don't understand because the female doesn't understand about why she's experiencing what she's experiencing. It's a rabbit hole, a cycle of, you know, dysfunction that does not need to happen. So thank you both for bringing light to this and making it a priority in our lives. It's very cohesive with my desire to bring the truth about intimacy to the world, right? There's so many places where we get this artificial intimacy from, or even in your case, this artificial like sense of security. Oh, well, you know, you're fine, just deal. Well, that is like this, it's not really you, and kind of this fluffing of how to deal with their problem, instead of like really figuring out and being explorative and trying to figure out what else is out there that we can do, instead of just, this is what my knowledge is, this is what I was taught in school, so I can't veer off of what, you know. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and something like you were kind of touching upon there was the pain experience or the experience of kind of having some of these different issues that we could discuss. So, like, even when we think about orthopedic cases that we might see, shoulder pain, back pain, whatever it
Mhm.
is, even something very simple like that, and it seems kind of rather benign, and people are like, oh yeah, my back's, bothering me a little bit, or my shoulder's been bothering me, so I haven't been doing overhead presses or whatever. Even when we think about certain things like that, like, there is a meaning attached to that, right? So people define themselves based on their physical abilities a lot. Now, that might be to more, lesser, or greater extent, depending on who you are and what you do with your life, and just who you are as an individual. But at some baseline level, like, if you're not able to pick your kid up, if you're not able to lift 300 pounds overhead, whatever it means to you, your physical ability, if that's diminished in some way, then it takes an emotional toll. Like, there's no separation on the continuum of physical and emotional and psychological health. But then if you apply that to the pelvic floor, that's an area where there's lots of functions. So you have like a core stability function, you have circulatory and lymphatic function, but then you also
Mm,
have bowel and bladder function,
Mhm.
which there's a lot of shame and emotion attached to bowel and bladder control or lack thereof.
mm,
And then obviously the sexual function too. So like, it's a really super impactful area when there is an issue with that area and something's going wrong for people. So then you see that kind of emotional impact from the physical be that much more. And then, like you were
Yeah.
saying, it's a rabbit hole. Like, we look at all these things that like stress and cortisol can do for like global physiological processes and health, but then the worse you feel about yourself and the worse your emotional status is, the more it feeds the physical, but then the worse the physical is. So it's kind of this vicious cycle. And then combine that with it greatly impacts a relationship. I mean,
Right.
it's a super impactful area. So that's another reason we're kind of interested in helping people with it, because you see the benefits that you would helping any other physical process, but more so because it's a more impactful area. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's also the prescription side too. Like,
mm,
a lot of females, and I don't blame anyone for prescribing birth control. It's definitely something that you need to find what works for you and go for it. But there are side effects to birth control too, where just being on something like an estrogen based pill can actually cause you to have vaginal dryness, and you can
Yeah.
have pain and muscle tightness and your
Atrophy of the tissues.
atrophy of tissue within structures. And it's just it's it's very sad, just because that aspect you can address everything else, and if you don't address the prescription side, you could be not doing that person the service that they deserve. So you really want to make sure that you address the whole person, like what you were talking about and what Kyle was just touching on. Like the whole human is important, and regardless if we're pelvic health physical therapists or just physical therapists who weren't specializing in pelvic health, the whole body is essentially what is important, and you have to make sure you address the whole thing.
Yes.
It's an appropriate time to bring up WAP, I think. Do
Wow.
you know the song?
Oh my god.
Oh,
No.
Whip
Oh, Whip It Real Good, that one?
No.
Oh, even
boy.
worse.
This one's rated X, I think.
Well, it's like it became a big fad because it was talking about wet vaginas.
Oh,
Yes.
no, I
Like,
didn't.
People were talking about it, and some people were saying it almost was like a should mine be?
Yeah.
And people were like questioning themselves because they kept
Yeah.
hearing the song, and they're like, is that what it's supposed
But
to be like?
it was good because then it gave awareness and raised attention, gave people a
Yeah.
platform to basically be like,
I mean, I guess.
not everybody naturally.
My anger towards media and social norms it drives me insane. But I see your point in the fact that at least it did bring some light to a topic
So
that.
yeah, that was the good part about it, was people are like questioning it, and then eventually there was this platform for people who are in this field to talk about, like,
Yeah.
you may not, for a large variety of reasons, not have that your body function that way, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But then there's lubrication, which is,
Yeah.
in my opinion, almost unanimously a good idea.
Essential.
With the caveat that
No matter what.
the only exception being if you're, considering different tools you may be using, or condoms, or allergies. Those are the only
Do you
considerations.
put moisturizer on your face before you use makeup? Right?
Right.
Like then you need to also lubricate the proper areas and moisturize proper areas of your body. Something I want to speak to that you guys were sort of dancing around with your expertise and then my expertise kind of coming together. As a kid, I was taught food, shelter, and water. You have everything you need, right? You get older and that message comes with you. Food, shelter, and water. You have everything you need. That's bullshit. Not true, right? Like we don't have, or it's like clothes on your back and food in your tummy and a roof over your head, so you have everything you need. Well, oftentimes that is that was the very clear message I received, but people also get that message in an underlying kind of way. And so sexual health is an essential function to our happiness, right? When I started my journey, I started focusing on sexual health, and I was like, I want to unravel this. And then it kind of morphed into relationships. Okay, what's with the relationship? And then it morphed into the individual. And it's like, oh, wow, okay. So in order to get to, the other side of it, we really have to focus on the individual and their ability to have, conflict management. That's my favorite topic to have, and emotional health. And it's like, well, if they can't even reach an orgasm, then they're not going to have, like, that's an essential function of releasing endorphins in our brain and being able to have the happy, lucky feelings, right? And in my media strife is the artificial intimacy. This topic is coming up so much in the last few interviews, but the artificial intimacy that our world is receiving from tech and from Facebook and all these other media platforms is really terrible. We get to avoid things instead of dealing with things, where back in the day you had to face your problems. You didn't get to just run away from them most often. Obviously there's different situations, but so to wrap it all together, like the whole "You Are Not Broken" is such a powerful movement to be able to bring to people and help them understand that when you're not experiencing the healthy physical functions you deserve to experience, you are going to have internal battles, and that internal battle is going to affect your partnership or relationships you have in your life, and is going to affect your ability to be confident and trusting and vulnerable behind closed doors, which is what intimacy is: providing a trusting, comfortable, vulnerable environment to just talk about how you're feeling. Never mind, take your clothes off and experience anything else, right? So
yeah. And
yeah, I mean, so, and like on the "You're Not Broken" kind of aspect of things.
Yeah.
Like when I think that's a cultural and like a healthcare system narrative that needs to have a shift a little bit. So certainly providers who are a little bit more holistic, we'd consider ourselves that way. Um, don't really tend to buy into that kind of narrative and peddle that to patients. Um, when we look at like physiology and physical tissue injuries represent pain in your experience and the brokenness that you have, maybe even physically, like you look at, oh, there's some scar tissue here, or this tendon looks like it's thinning a little bit, or this bone might have a microfracture, or whatever it might be. You need an adjustment because your bones are out of place, quote unquote. Those types of narratives to us are, you're broken is what it tells people. And the problem with that is at the end of the day, it leaves them with no hope. So it's, you are broken, and you either go from being broken to being fixed, and somebody has to do that fixing to you. So on top of the fact that you don't have hope and there's not like a roadway for you to have a solution, or if there is, it's somebody else to do it to you. And you don't have control of your own body and your own healthcare. Whereas like if you present a narrative of modern pain science, which I'll refrain from delving into that rabbit hole too far, but just looking at pain, just looking at pain being an output of your brain in response to perceived threat. And therefore, we can do different things, and lots of providers can do different things to help alter that experience of and decrease that perception of threat, therefore decrease your pain experience. And then you get healthier, and there's a pathway for that, and lots of pathways for that. And then there's lots of ways you can do that yourself and be independent with it too. But yeah, I mean, like that's such a much more useful patient narrative, I think, for people.
And to bring it
much more empowering.
Sorry to cut you off. I didn't intend that.
But
to bring it to like my side of the fence, basically what you're talking about, my husband and I recently had this conversation too with the medical professionals. It's like, it was more of a dispute because I had to make a point here, but I was like, the doctors are there to keep you alive. Like they're there to help you learn to stay surviving, right? Their work is not intentional in helping you thrive. Where holistic medicine and your medicine, your intention is to get people out of survival mode and into thrival mode. Like you want them to have the skills to thrive and have the best life, where it's like, oh, you have diabetes, here's this medicine that's going to impact, keep you from dying, but it's not necessarily going to heal your diabetes, right? And so that that distinction, it definitely does need to change, because then it creates a codependent relationship between healthcare systems and relying on doctors, and even your relationship with your doctor. If you're not getting what you want from your doctor, find another one. You don't have to keep paying that doctor, right? Like that doctor isn't privileged to your money. You're paying them for a service, right? The fact that, go ahead. Yeah, right. Exactly. Like the fact that we have to go get a physical in order to go to school. It's like my doctor doesn't deserve to have that power over my life and what I'm experiencing in my life. So, and we perpetuate that message from childhood of, you have to listen to somebody else's rules. You have to follow somebody else's game plan, and you don't have a say in how your life plays out. You're going to work a 9 to 5 for the rest of your life and all those other things. So it's just, there's so much that equates to, and all of those messages come with us behind closed doors, and they come with us with our healing journeys, and they come with us with, we're not empowered to seek support. We're empowered to rely on the people that may not have our best interest in mind.
Right. And the thing too, and I'm just bringing this up because I feel like a lot of sexual health is framed around, from what we have seen, a lot of pelvic health as well, around women people with female anatomy.
Yes.
Whereas we also treat people with male anatomy. Like we treat,
people
when
with
you have
vulvas, people with penises. That's the
So we treat. We treat pain with erection, pain with ejaculation. There's definitely, I'll say, erectile dysfunction. There's other, testicular pain is a big one. So it's like there's men
have pelvic floors too. Is what you're saying.
Men have pelvic floors too.
Thank you for saying that too. I totally spaced that because women, and I don't often deal with it in the other fashion, but it's true. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were just talking about that the other day because we feel like if someone is going to find help, it's usually going to be a woman.
Mm.
Just because they're resourceful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And when a man has pain, not only is it the stigma of I'm broken, I can't do my duty, if
Yeah.
you will, they also don't know who to go to.
Well, that, and it's like I have to be the big tough guy, right? Like
Right.
the societal stigma of needing to be the strong one that doesn't talk about their pain. It's like, no, you deserve the help just as much as anyone else.
Right.
Exactly.
Which, men statistically don't talk about their pain, their problems in general anyway.
Yeah.
Never mind when it's having to do with pelvic floor and especially sexual function. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that extends to like,
I don't really
When
think
you
it's
talk-
something they talk about at a fire. You know what I mean? Like people aren't talking about that stuff.
oh yeah, no, I can't compare that.
The bro conversation. Come on, man, you can't get it up or something
Right.
stupid like that. It's like,
Unless I'm sitting around the fire with the no.
yeah.
How was I gonna get it? Oh, so
Sorry, I
like
didn't
even
interrupt you.
relationships.
Mhm.
When you think of like whether you're talking about like heteronormative or other types of relationships, or even just relationship with yourself, right? I mean, you can have good sexual health with yourself without requiring another partner or partners or whatever. But even when you think about that and put it in that context,
Mhm.
what does it do for your emotional state and your self-worth and self-love if you have these issues? And so,
Mm.
like, you can look at sexual health in that function too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so exciting. I'm so thankful that both of you joined me on this podcast and had this open conversation. You two are a power couple, and I felt that from the first time we had a long conversation. I was like super passionate, and you're joining our wonderful networking group, which I'm super excited to have like a power team, because I often am alone in my corner. So it's like exciting to not be alone in the corner anymore, playing by myself in my own
Yes.
sandbox. So thank you both for
Yeah, we got to practice our howls now.
yeah. So how can people find you?
So we're really active on Instagram.
Yeah.
So it's at Renegade, RENEGADE movement, MVMT. So at
Okay.
Renegade MVMT. And our website's a good place too. It has all of our information and some really fun pictures. So that's, I'll say it's www.renegademovementandperformance.com.
And spelled out.
And is spelled out.
Okay.
The actual
But really, Instagram is probably the easiest place to get a hold of us, or just head to our website and send us an email. But we
And
would
I'll put all your information in the show notes.
Oh yeah, perfect. So it'll be clickable and it'll be awesome.
Right, exactly. I love it. Well, thank you for being here.
Yes,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having
Thank
us.
you so much.
Welcome.